Yeah, you and I are both having appearance issues. This is going to be ghost mode show.
Yeah, man. Like, look at that hair.
Oh, dude, mine's just bad.
That's not anytime soon. A bit more of it.
I'm recording now. Actually, is coming out. But
Your shift seconds. 4,
you're gonna love this whole
2,
story. It's
1.
There are cameras in the sky, lasers in our living rooms.
Get a friend, get informed, and get involved. It's We're Not.
It's enough to make you go crazy. Oh, it's enough to make you mad.
Well, good evening and welcome to We Are Not Cattle. I am your host, Jake Counts, coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. It is the 10th day of April 2014, and we're going to be live here for the next hour. And joining me on the line is Josh Wiley of the Journalistic Revolution. Say hi, Josh. Uh-oh, I think I lost your audio.
Oh my goodness, sorry.
There we go.
I muted myself for your beautiful intro. How are you doing, Jake? Thanks so much
That's
for
all
having
right,
me.
man. All right, so the show's off to a galloping start right now. Okay, so I'm doing well, but man, did I have a fun day today, Josh. You're gonna love this. So every angle that I got hit by today with the stick of the state was phenomenal. So I started out my morning, and for those of you that know me, I'm a poker player, and I like to go to play in tournaments. They run satellite tournaments for the World Series of Poker, so they were running a satellite over in North Carolina, and I thought that I was going to just venture out. There was a poker tournament started at 9 a.m. I was like, cool, that's 2 hours from here. I'll venture out, go play some poker, come back, hang out, have time for the show, and life will be peaches. So it's about 2.5 hours to the casino. I leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. Tournament starts at 9. I get there at 9:05. So I had to get gas and some other things. So I pull in. I'm like, sweet. Go down, go past the first guy, checks my ID, everything's good. Get up there and want to register for the tournament. And they said, well, do you have a player's card? And I'm like, well, no, I don't. So I said, well, you have to have one. So they're like, you have to go back downstairs and register. I'm like, holy crap. And the one guy's like, no, I can do it here. It's fine. So I was like, oh, this guy's rock and roll. So heck yeah. So I decide to, we start filling out the paperwork and stuff, and I'm just kind of chatting with everybody, letting them know that, hey, I just drove up here from Atlanta like half hours. And they're like, oh, cool. And the guy goes, I can't register you. I was like, you can't register me? I'm like, so I got to go downstairs? He goes, no, your license is expired. I can't register you. I was like, really? And so I get my license. Sure enough, my license expired on my birthday a little over a month ago. I'm like, awesome. And I'm like, so there's anything you can do with me? He's like, no, do you have anything with like any other federal ID with your picture on it, like a gun permit or a fishing permit? And it still sounds funny to say that. A gun permit and a fishing permit. I have to have a permit to do things and exercise my rights in the free country that we live in. And I was like, no, I don't. And they're like, well, sorry, guys, you got to go. You can't play. I was like, okay, great. So I get in the car, drive back home 2 hours, 2.5 hours. This is so fun. It gets even better. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to man up and I'm just going to go ahead and take care of this today. I get in, grab all the necessary paperwork, the necessary 15 fucking documents that I have to have. Excuse my language, everybody, but this is going to be like an off-the-cuff show. This will be very fun. So I grab like the 15 documents that you need, go over to the DMV. It's like a couple minutes from my house, like 5 minutes away. Stand in line, get my magic ticket called. Yeah, I won the golden ticket. Go up to the lady teller, no personality, and hardly ever looks at me, doesn't say anything. So she starts filling out my stuff and goes, oh, I can't issue you a driver's license. And I said, really? I got all the documentation here. What's the problem? She goes, there's a conflict in the state of South Carolina. So I was like, okay, so what does that have to do with me getting a license in Georgia? She goes, well, we're all connected now. And I'm like, oh, isn't that just peaches? So I go back to, she's like, well, you got to call them. So I come back to the house, call them up, find out what the dealio is. It's a ticket for running a red light that I don't even remember doing in Florida on my way back to Georgia when I moved. And so it's a ticket in Florida that I have to pay for. So I'm like, okay. So I just paid the ticket, and they send you the receipt, and everything's good, right? She goes, yeah. And then you have to pay us $100 reactivation fee to reactivate your license. I go, do what? She's like, yeah, you have to pay us $100. I go, you have to pay. I have to pay you $100 so you can click a box and hit submit. And I said, lady, I know technology. It can't be that difficult to say, oh, your license is invalid. It is now valid. So that was my entire day. And so I spent my days in the car. So I drove 2.5 hours to have the state punch me in the nuts. And then I drove 2.5 hours back to have the state punch me in the nuts again. And now I have to pay my ticket plus the $100, magic button click that they have to produce. And so, yeah, I had an amazing day with the state today. It was so much fun.
Dude, I hate to sound so brazen, but the day that an ordeal like that happens to me, where I'm getting popped for a ticket in Florida issued by the state of South Carolina, so my Georgian driver's license cannot be reactivated, that's literally the day that I drive 17 hours to go register my plates in Wisconsin, where you don't need to provide any form of identification for a license plate, and I start driving without a license.
And that's the entire bitch of it. It's like, why do I need a license to travel? The Constitution gives me the right to travel freely in between states without any whatever. And so you just see where we are. This is where we're at. We're in bureaucracy hell, everybody. There is so much damn red tape. And I was sitting there just thinking to myself, going, how in the hell do I have to pay $100 for somebody to click a freaking button? And that's where the state is, and that's what they do. And Stephanie was like, I can't believe they charge you $100. I'm like, I can. All they do is extort money from you, no matter where it is. It's like, oh, you need some of that? And so just imagine, if you will, Josh, imagine. Even if you want to keep the driver's license program, that's fine. Leave the government out of it, let private agencies do it. And gee, I wonder how much that would cost. Probably not that much.
Or just make your driver's license your insurance, and don't mandate insurance, because if you can get insurance, then it means that someone's willing to literally pay for you to be on the road.
Exactly. Or, I mean, this is just silly. And I told Stephanie, I'm like, all it is just people taking responsibility for your actions. So it's like, well, what happens if the 15-year-old gets behind the car? Well, if the 15-year-old gets behind the car and the parents know about it and he gets in an accident, he's liable. I mean, it's not that difficult. It's really, really not. But we just have this idea that we need the state. And thank God I listened to 5.5 hours of Peace Revolution before I came, and got a really good perspective of how all this stuff has happened, and how all the red tape has happened, and all of this stuff. This is nothing new. This is the oldest trick in the book. And what's so frustrating is that it's like it was the perfect thing that I've ever heard Richard Grove say, where he said, why do they need to change the play when every play they run's a touchdown? I mean, every time they run the play, it's a touchdown.
Good one.
It's so simple. Like, oh, well, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna create this kind of society here, and then we're gonna create a panopticon where we can surveil you and track you and trace you, and everything's fine, and people are cool with that. People are fine with that. People are fine with the status quo, and I didn't snap, but I just saw the silliness, as to quote Joe Rogan, the silliness of the state. Just how silly all of this is. Like, how is this all that silly? Like, I have to have a license to fish? It's like, well, you could go fishing a lot. It's like, yeah, but I could go fishing once. Like, why do I need a license to go?
I mean, quite frankly, it's immaterial how much you fish, right?
Correct. I mean, if I'm doing it just to save my life, I mean, there was that big lawsuit up in, oh my gosh, where was that? Was it in Michigan? Where the guy was going? No, it wasn't in Michigan. It was somewhere in the Midwest, where he was just going because he was abstinence, which he is completely allowed to do. And they threw him in the slammer because he doesn't have a fishing license. Come on out. And then he has his jury trial. I can't remember the gentleman's name.
It was from South Carolina or something.
Oh, there we go.
The homeless fellow.
Correct.
But he wasn't actually, the charge was not for the fishing license. The charge was actually because he was caught living in a storage unit. But hey, I mean, quite frankly, I think he should be able to do that too if the storage unit company obviously allows him to.
I would agree.
I don't give a damn where you live, man.
Oh, which brings us to yurts. Why not? I mean, that's what you were talking about. That's very.
I've been telling you about yurts for ages, man.
And my wife and I were talking about that today. It was just very, it was very interesting. And I don't know if she cares that I talk about this stuff, but I think it's very, very fascinating that in America I have to have this conversation. It's like, well, how can we avoid this? She's like, well, where can we go? I'm like, well, number one, we can't go anywhere because America is ironically, one of the freer countries in the entire world. Now, yes, we have the backup battle plan, but we're not going to expose that on air because that doesn't really bode well for anybody. But I was like, well, we could move onto somebody's property and just throw a yurt out there. But then the regulators are going to come by and the state, yes, they will. The state will come by and tell you that is an obstruction and you'll have to pay for it. I guarantee you, code enforcement will come by. I don't care what link you send me, dude. I'm telling you. The state is there to harass.
No. Okay, yeah, I hear you.
Now.
You're absolutely right. And the state, can change building codes and for temporary membrane-based structures. But as someone who's researched this to a great extent, right? You've got your international building codes, your national building codes, your state building codes, and your local building codes in most cases, right? Hierarchy, unlike federal government, actually works the way it should simply because there's no enforcement mechanism for international building codes, and there's virtually no enforcement for national building codes. So your state building code, which for the most part is based off of the international building code, is essentially the letter of the law, and that varies from state to state. But on a county basis, a lot of places usurp this, and you have to do your research because I don't know, Jake, if you've heard of the tiny house movement.
I have heard of it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these people are encountering the same issues because the tiny house movement sprung up because people were building all of these small houses that were under the what is it? 1,000 square foot minimum in most places.
Sure, we'll just make up an arbitrary number, but whatever the gods deem it to be. Yeah.
I mean, it varies from state to state, but sure. 1,200 is about the average. But anyways, so people started putting wheels on their houses to essentially shirk building codes, and then new building codes were erected on top of that. But some places in the country not only accommodate smaller housing now, but other places, especially more rural communities, literally have provisions for this in the building code because they know that there are people who literally live in sheds with wood stoves in them in America. So if you can find a place like that, and they do exist, trust me, there are multiple counties in any state in America that have these provisions.
The EPA is going to come and shut you down for having a wood-burning stove. So it's just like you've got the bureaucratic red tape just absolutely everywhere.
It's a joke. It's virtually able to live free in this country.
No, not a chance. I mean,
no, because even in that situation, if you were to build a tiny structure, quote unquote, legally, in a lot of places it's legal to erect it and it's legal to live in it for a period of time, but not indefinitely. So you can't list it as your primary residence. So even if you were to build it by the letter of the law and live in it full time, you'd still be breaking the law.
Just so silly. I mean, the silliness. All right, first of all, let's go back to my situation from earlier. I was thinking about this. Think about how many different ways that this is just so silly. All right, number one, the state gets to control whether I can spend my money on a card game or not. Now, how silly is that? All right, number one, that's silly. Oh, you cannot gamble unless you're within these imaginary borders that we stole this land from these people, so now we have to give them something. So we'll give them these imaginary borders, and you can go in here and place your money on a table. But if you go outside of that imaginary border and you place some money on a table, we're going to arrest you with guns. And so that was the first thing that was silly. The second thing is that I have to show identification to be able to do this. It's like, why do I need to show you federal identification? If I could show you an ID card or prove to you my age meets your requirements, why do I need to do this? And I know why you need to do it. For tax purposes, the IRS can get their money from you. It's all so silly. It's so silly. And I just saw the state in action today, and it just made me want to push even harder. Maybe it's the blood moon from, what was it, yesterday, the day before? I don't know. We call it the celestial alignment again, whatever you want to call it. Maybe like the Illuminati did some kind of like voodoo rain dance on Jake yesterday, and I was just toast today. There was nothing I could do. But the ironic thing is I took the day off of work to go and do all these things, and so instead of getting to go do something I wanted to do with my time off of work, I get slapped around by the state, and that's why I was very, very upset. So, speaking of getting slapped around by the state, what about this thing in Nevada, man? I mean, that really does speak to what we were just talking about, where I said, no, the state's going to come and enforce it anyway, which they don't have any right to do what they're doing, and yet, here's the state. We got our armed paramilitary guys with dogs, boo, coming to get you. I mean, what country am I in, dude? What country am I in? Where the ranchers can't even roam free. Home on the range, that's no longer...
Well, the interesting thing about this Nevada case is that, these sort of free speech zones have been around for at least since September the 11th, right? It's typically around.
They started when they had the G8 out in Seattle, where they arrested all those people.
Oh yeah,
after the cops dressed up like protesters and threw bottles and stuff, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, great. I mean, they did the same thing at up in Canada. For was it the G20?
Yeah, G20 in Toronto, correct.
Yeah, in Toronto. Well, they did. I guess they didn't have a free speech zone, but they did have like a state center for these mass arrests. But it's just this Nevada case is just interesting because typically free speech zones are seen around military installations or pre-designated for protests and stuff like this. This is the first time where, at least to my knowledge, that the feds have come in. And on private land, essentially, or at least
state land.
State land now, because they've supposedly eminent domained it. But this is the first time, at least in a private case, where they've set up a free speech zone just for the sake of one family, not a mass or swath of protesters. I mean, it really is. It's a joke, but I don't know, man.
It's so silly. It's like, and when you see the video, and I don't, I got friends of mine that are cops, but I mean, come on, guys. When you look at this, tell me that that's the country that you want to live in for real. You want a bunch of paramilitary guys walking around trying to enforce a federal law which they have no right to enforce, because these guys have the water rights there, from what I understand. They've laid the pipes, they've done all of the stuff, that's their water, they have it with the county because they utilize that land, and they have grazing rights there too. So the mainstream media spins it as, oh, they owe $1.2 million in grazing rights. Yeah, says who? Oh, says the federal government, and they're over everything. Well, no, they're not over this property. They're not over this land, but you said they claim eminent domain over, of course. And so, I mean, this is what it's coming down to, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is it. If you want to look at the soft battles for freedom, these are the battles. These are them. The battle for freedom with what Adam Kokesh did, love him or hate him, whatever you think about him, that took balls to do what he did, and he saw the power of the state, and he couldn't believe how bad the state was, or how powerful the state was to just come after him for trying to make a ceremonial gesture. And so now we have this other situation where these rancher guys, these guys are old school, man. These are like this is like, watching somebody a little bit older than my father. Dude, they've had this property since 1800s. They ain't leaving. That ain't happening. So what do? You bring in a bunch of goons and armored vehicles and I don't know, man. I don't know. And you can't sit here and debate with me if you're a police officer and tell me that these guys aren't goons. Body a 56-year-old woman and then tasering a bunch of people that aren't doing anything when they try to defend you for body slamming a 56-year-old woman, or 56, 58, whatever. It's just it's really becoming to the point where it's like, wow, this is what you get. This is what you get when you just go along with the status quo. You just cruise along and everything's fine. And I bet it was really funny when I posted that thing on Facebook the other day, Josh. It's like some people were like, what are you even talking about? What are you talking about, Nevada? It's like, oh my Lord, have mercy.
No, but Jake, they still haven't found the missing Malaysian plane yet. That's very important. Don't you want to know where that plane went? It's like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego for adults?
It's
and
really
you love
silly.
it.
It's really silly. It's like I said. Now, why change the play? I mean, this is just absolutely bonkers. So, where do you think this goes, man? Where do you think this land thing goes? I mean,
that's the worst part about it, because for me, my personal line in the sand, I don't know about calling in the Michigan militia. Quite frankly, I'm terrified of militia groups simply because I feel like most of them are infiltrated, and that's something that we need to talk about.
That's all right. Go ahead. We'll get back to that because that's a very good point.
Well, I mean, I would just note that, I come from a state here in Michigan that has been made famous for militias. In the Michigan militia, it's the largest militia in America. I still think to this day, it was the militia of which not Timothy McVeigh, but his supposed partner in crime. What is his name?
Nah, we'll pick it up. I'll God.
That's killing me. But anyways, Timothy McVeigh's partner in Oklahoma City, supposed partner in Oklahoma City, the second identified one, not the third one who they canceled the man chase for and eliminated from the story, was a supposed member of the militia for quite some time, and also a known FBI informant.
Sure.
But the Michigan militia for decades has had essentially problems with massive infiltration by the feds, and this is true of a lot of groups like militias and white nationalist extremist groups as well. Because
even in Martin Luther King's day, I remember with the Black Panther Party. I mean, they even talked about how that they had more informants in there than actual members.
Absolutely. But there's a distinction to be made, I think, between, groups that are dangerous to the establishment being infiltrated to destroy them, and groups that are just dangerous being infiltrated to kind of control what they do to limit political action.
Sure.
So in the case of something like the Michigan militia, having talked to and known past members and people who are affiliated with the Michigan militia to this day, I can tell you that a lot of them are ideologically like-minded, and they're nice people, and they just don't want to be screwed with.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they still don't realize, and I try to explain to them that they're part of an organization whose leadership has been thoroughly infiltrated by federal members. And you'll never know just who these people are until after something happens. But the people who are directing your actions are the people who are ultimately looking to provoke a response. So the first red flag that comes up for me when I see this Nevada case is, are the militia members being egged on to travel all the way across the country, as many of them are traveling, large distances to come to the aid of these ranchers, supposedly? Sure. Is this being egged on by federal informants?
Yeah, why not? I mean,
to stage a large conflict, Waco, Ruby Ridge style.
And it's so funny because now the mainstream media is not in their pocket anymore. Like they can't like battering ram a daycare center, bomb a daycare center, and then say that, that it was a bunch of ideologically, dangerous people to the state. You can't have people like what you had at Waco. Those people are dangerous. They're running what did they always call it? They called it like a compound or something like that.
Yeah, the Waco compound.
Yeah, because
it was a fucking church with a warehouse attached to it.
They call it things like that to give you the certain connotation that you'll have this predetermined notion of what the group is and what the group stands for. And looking at this case, man, I don't know what's going to happen. But if you look at something like that, like with the cool thing about it was, I don't mean to digress so much, but the cool thing about it when I was watching the video, none of the video was cool, obviously, because it was a horrific event. But just how many people had phones. It's like as soon as that happened, like everybody took their phones out and everybody, because so now that's why they wanted to push for, and they still are pushing for it, the ability to shut your phone off if the police decide that they want to shut your phone off. That's absolutely unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And then they will refuse to wear cameras, which not only protect the officer, but they protect us. So it's like, If you guys are refusing to let us film you, and you guys don't want to be filmed, what do you got to hide? What is so incredibly sensitive, And then they always take this higher road, this holier than thou. Well, we're under public scrutiny, and we can't give people's faces away, and we can't, And then you get up to the upper echelon, and then you get like, well, it's national security, It's in an envelope somewhere, top secret stamped on it. You can't talk about it, so. I don't know. I really don't know where all this stuff is going, but I see the way that the federal government treats people like this and treats that try to stand up. And typically, the idea is to either disinfo, and they can't disinfo anymore. So now they're going to just try to use force, and I think it's really sad. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow and see how many people show up, both on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's such a hard situation because my personal line in the sand is if these people ever try to take my personal affections or property, then that's the day that I would rather die than be a serf.
Well,
But
and
at
that's
this,
what it is. It's serfdom. I mean, it's
yeah,
serfdom when the government can come in and say that we're taking this of yours. That is serfdom. That is just plain out robbery. And what do we expect from the state? The state robs you every day, and you don't care, and you don't say anything. But it's just a little bit. It's gonna take a little bit, Josh. Just a
well,
little bit.
Jake, I want to bring up something that's kind of tangential
Sure.
and a little bit kind of like, I guess, quote unquote, like more esoteric, fun conspiracy theory
Oh,
stuff.
let's go,
But
man.
have you ever heard of John Titor, the
No,
John Titor story?
no, I haven't. Enlighten me.
So John, I mean, the whole thing is essentially a hoax, but this guy appeared on the internet in 1999, essentially saying that he was a time traveler, and talking about this civil war that would come in America, and it's a really well done hoax simply because the guy has such an intimate knowledge not only of kind of conspiracy theory and civil rights and constitutionalism, but also he's clearly has a technical background, so he can kind of play this time travel angle off to where it's somewhat believable based on scientific analysis. But this it's not he was not actually a time traveler, but he was somebody who was essentially trying to teach people about a future that America could have off this giant hoax and getting people to think about this stuff. And one of the things that he says that's very interesting is the year 2008 was a general date by which time everyone realized that the world they thought they were living in was over. The Civil War in the United States will start in 2004. I would describe it as having a Waco type event every month that steadily gets worse. The conflict will consume everyone in the U.S. by 2012, and it will end in 2015 with a very short World War III. Now, obviously, all of this stuff did not come to pass, but the things he describes are essentially that there will be a war between rural individuals and state-backed mercenary groups from the cities, Agenda 21 style, right? And he says that the people who stay in the cities will stay at the cost of their civil liberties, and the people who leave will retain most of their freedom, but they'll have a drastically reduced standard of living. So he's again, through this elaborate hoax, kind of trying to introduce people to these Agenda 21-esque angles, and that's something that we haven't really talked about, Jake, because what's happening in Nevada right now
That's
is
it.
very
dude.
much
It's
along
it.
those lines.
Yeah, it's not just United States federal property. It's going to be international property. It's going to be UN property, and then we're going to be shoved into the compact cities because of the Earth. And you're already seeing the PR rollout for this stuff. You saw the guy from the World Bank say that the one thing we could do is set a steady price for carbon. We can help cure world poverty, and we can do all of these things, raise the standard of living. No. You guys, that's not what you guys are in the business of doing. You guys are not in the business of raising world poverty. You guys are not in the business of doing any of that stuff. You're in the business to make money. Don't sell us like we're a bunch of morons. We understand how this stuff works. I mean, for the most part, anytime a banker tells you something, just think the exact opposite. We're doing it for your benefit. You're doing it to absolutely rape me. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, and if people haven't read the '92 Rio Conference papers yet, then
we can't help We can't.
yeah,
help
you can't help them. Seriously though, and it's sad, but you can't because it's funny because Fox News actually covered this story a couple days ago before this development, and it was of course in a very laughable light because my dad's got it on in the other room on occasion, and I walked past and.
Sure.
So they
Reminds
describe the eminent domain aspect and the fact that
Oh,
these
of
people
course,
are being
'cause
kicked off their land.
Once again, the feds own everything. It's,
But of course it's did you believe this could ever happen in America? The Obama administration, the evil Obama administration, and nobody else trying to steal this cattle rancher's land. And then you gotta think to yourself, it's like, wait,
Who
this
set
is
up
based on a
eminent domain?
UN referendum
Yeah,
that was
it was
signed
set up-
that was signed into law by Clinton, signed into law by George W. Bush, signed into law by Barack Obama, ratified by Congress on a 4-year basis every single time, and you're not even gonna mention the name?
No,
You're not
you
even
can't.
gonna mention it.
No, it's Obama, dude. Come on.
Ugh.
It's much easier. Once again, it's much easier to just have a bad guy. Because if we have a bad guy, then we can just go after him. And it's the same stuff as as every game plan, everybody. I mean, once again, touchdown. I'm just going to say that every time. Every time you see the game plan, I'm just going to start saying touchdown. Because they run the same game plan, and it's a touchdown every time. Bill Clinton, touchdown. George W. Bush, touchdown. Their last term is always doing something to edge in globalization, to edge out the little guy, to increase the wealth of the upper class, and then to decrease the wealth of the middle class. It's the same thing every time. And it's not to say that these guys are doing it themselves. It's the policies that are in place and the policies that they continue to go on. And then what they do is they just go, well, that Bush, well, that Bill Clinton, well, that Barack Obama. And they just wag the finger at the figurehead. And you buy it. Touchdown. Once again, touchdown. Every time. So I think you're right, Josh. The ramifications of what we're seeing here, it's, when I started researching this stuff, globalization was kind of moving it, I don't want to say a crawl, but it was like a walk. You could see it in like little things, and there would be an article about every, 6 months or so talking about how there was a referendum going around, or how they're talking about, moving to sustainable development. And basically what sustainable development, everybody, code word, that means packing you in like a bunch of rats into megacities. That is sustainable development. And then shutting off everything else, and then controlling the amount of energy you use, the amount of food you consume. That's sustainable development. And if you want that, oh my God, holy neo-feudalism Batman. But that's what we're in for, because now we're at a stage where it's not just a walk, it's like a gallop. And and it looks like it's about to go for a run if stuff like this doesn't hold up.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that we're kind of talking about is that this is the revelation of the method.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So I would say at least since the ceremonial sacrificial.
Explain what we're talking about when we say revelation of method. I think we should clarify grammar real quick.
Sure. Well, I guess the revelation of the method would be a slow and steady but consistently escalating process by which the control grid is essentially explained to the American people, and done so in a way through propaganda, news media, and mass media in general,
sure.
Where it's done in an acceptable manner. And I would say ever since at least the ceremonial sacrificial king, the assassination of JFK, and the true establishment of 100% dictatorship
through the CIA dictatorship, by the way.
I would say a moneyed interest dictatorship,
okay, well,
more so
fair.
than a CIA dictatorship.
Okay.
I guess the CIA are important. They're an important playing piece, but they're not the kings, right?
Right. Correct. No.
So ever since then, at least, we've seen this steady escalation of globalism, but it's been sort of the laying the foundations, not only legislatively, but in practice, working on things like, robbing countries through the IMF, working on things like hard mind control experiments, working on things like Project Mockingbird. And it's not, I'm not trying to diminish those horrible exploits because they hurt a lot of people, but that was really the practice round for what we're seeing now, that these programs have kind of base, and now that they've been, for better, for the most part, perfected, it becomes socially acceptable to tell people about them because they're going to become an increasing part of their life.
It becomes very frustrating the more you read, the more you go back into history, see where all of this came from. I think that I'm really excited us piece out together because I've learned so much in the short time that it's been since we recorded our first episode.
Amazing.
Lord.
I've been clear for 6 days.
There you go. Some big pharma ads for everybody.
Thank you, Pfizer.
You're welcome. Anyway, but just seeing where this all came out, how the British Empire moved from the imperial model state, the actual nation state, to front companies with the East India Company, and how how they utilized it for opium to get China involved in world trade in order to, and then leveraging that out to India, and then using the slave trade down here in the South to run cotton back to India, and just making this whole big web of international commerce. And so now it's getting more and more, but what they've done is they've just built on top of these things. They built on top of the ideas. They built on top of the control grid, like you said before. It was a very pertinent term. They had all these spy centers in place since one of the things that was very interesting is the guy was talking about how Lincoln talked about his phone was tapped even back then. Thinking about in the 1800s, they were tapping phone lines in order to steal information. So they've been doing it a long time, 200 years almost. So they've perfected the game of watching and spying. And so now the technology now where they think that they can game the system, they think that they can control the narrative, and now they're going to start putting in the see where humanity goes. And even the World Bank had said it, and Lee King a great video on it, where he talked how the World Bank said that people will start rioting, and there's going to be mass civil disobedience because of the technology that we have now. We can communicate with people on the other side of the world, and we can see how shitty their life is, and we're going to accept it. And so now I think what you're seeing is a race between the super states to kind of get in front of the population, like you were talking before, like quell the population and make sure that we've got everything under control before they figure out what's going on, because the cat's about to be out of the bag here pretty soon when a lot of more people are going to start asking questions, and this is going to bring people into the fold as well. People that are old school like my parents and people that generation understand the idea of land rights, property rights, and utilizing governmental land to do things like ranching and stuff like that, or county land and state land. So I think it'll be interesting. I really
it certainly will be. But touching on something that you said at the beginning of that statement, when we're talking about the global economy as a whole, I think that the most important point to make, or at least the most important point that I can make right now, is that this old idea of the mercantile system, mercantilism, never ended, and it's viewed as this economic practice that was used in the 16 to 1800s, and it's been dead for a long time.
It just went away.
Exactly, but really quickly,
Just
giving
like the oligarchs,
the
dude, Josh, the oligarchs just went away. They just made all their money. The royalty made all their money. They just went away. They're gone.
No, and then they made nonprofit tax-exempt foundations, and now they help the world.
There
CJ,
we go.
They help us.
That's what they do.
They make us colleges. It's great, and they provide public broadcasting. I love it. But just for the Wikipedia definition, mercantilism is an economic theory and practice common in Europe from the 16th to the 18th century that promoted governmental regulation of a nation's economy for the purpose of augmenting state power at the expense of rival national powers. So these bullet points here, these highlights of mercantile exchange are the building of a network of overseas colonies, forbidding your colonies to trade with opponent nations, monopolizing markets by monopolizing the ports, the banning of the exportation of gold and silver, even for payments. The export of subsidies, forbidding trade to be carried in foreign ships, which obviously is more of one of these older aspects that has gone by the wayside. But this is a system of economic imperialism.
Sure.
And I would argue that what we're talking about is simply the technocratization of the mercantilist system.
No, it's that once again, they've been doing it for a very long time, but now they have all these new goodies and these new tools that they're using, and they can convince you that you're not a slave, and it's absolutely astonishing. It's like, no, that's happening over in other countries. Everything here is fine. And then with the duping of the American people and looking at the system that we have in place, this is the exact same system that the founders fought to get away from. This is the exact system that Patrick Henry warned you about, where he said that if you set up a Congress, if you set up an electorate, if you set up an executive branch, you're going to have either one of two things. You're either going to have a dictatorship of Congress, or have a dictatorship of the executive branch. And that's what you're going to get. And 200 years later, bada bing, here's what we got. And it's just like what you said. people have to realize that these older systems didn't go away. They just changed. And they got this new technology to basically run all the other gaming of the system behind the scenes and convince you that you're in a completely different system that you are. It's like most people don't realize that we don't run most people would tell you that America is a capitalist country, and then we're not capitalist by any stretch of the imagination. We're fascist. By far. By far we're fascist. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. But I see the state. I see the state growing. I see the state having less and less care for its for its citizens. And then they have like ceremonial things like what happened with Lois Lerner. Oh, she's going to get arrested. And then, Eric Holder's on trial. And this is all vestigial stuff. Because if you watch the stupid interview where they talk about what's going to happen with Eric Holder, they said, well, they're going to request the documents and they're going to call the special prosecutor in and request the documents. And it could take months, even years for all the documents to come out. Meanwhile, if the state wanted any information on you, it's literally a click of a button and they've got your entire life story. So tell me why it's going to take years to get all these documents from Eric Holder. This is all just a scam, everybody. These are all scams. And they run it on you because they know that you're not going to pay attention for very long. They know that you're going to lose interest. You're just going to say, 6 months down the road, Fast and Furious, what was that? I don't know. Aren't the Red Sox on or something? What's going on?
It is. It's insane. Well, but ultimately, it's this horrible catch-22 because you really have two options: do what's going on in Nevada right now, and ultimately end up a corpse that is only going to become a national attention-grabbing story for the ban of firearms within certain communities.
Sure.
Or you just constantly get frustrated and talk your ass off on the air and have nobody listen to you.
Oh, is that what we're doing right now?
I guess that's what we do on a fairly regular basis.
Well, it's not even. I try to spread the idea that we can make change, but once again, it has to come from action. And so, when you see things like this, you have to call these things out and say, "Look, these people are taking action. Don't feel like you're all alone." And when you hear me get frustrated with the state, and usually the last 10 shows, I've tried to stay away from this stuff because, I don't think it's very healthy for us all to just bash the state all the time because it's just people, once again, Amsprache, it's just people doing their job, and that's what we're seeing, and we got to call it like it is, but you have to get other people to understand that when you hear somebody saying that, oh, well, we're just trying to do what we were told to do, once again, Amsprache, all these people got murdered because the Germans were just following orders. And that's what it is. And you have to make the mental connection that you're not going to be an order follower. It's like what Mark Passio talks about all the time. He said, all of these totalitarian regimes are enabled by one thing, and that's order followers. That is the only thing that enables them. So
Mark Passio also says that the most powerful word in the human language is no.
Two ways, yes. The N-O and N-O-W. So take that to heart, everybody. Understand that you can tell a state no. Understand that you can say no. You can resist. It's much easier. It's much easier, once again, to just go with the flow and just make stuff. Oh, that's fine. We'll just kind of deal with that. We'll just let this kind of play out, and then we'll do something next time. Well, now we're at a point where we're starting to see all these things happen, and I don't know if it's a good thing, bad thing, or what. But if you see these things happen in Capitol Hill, I think that they're just ceremonial. I really don't think that anything's going to come of this. I don't think that anybody's going to get in any trouble because nobody ever gets in trouble. Anybody that ever commits a huge crime in America never gets in trouble. It's people like this cattle rancher guy that's just trying to create a living for himself. And what happens, the state comes down and shakes the book at him. But you got people like John Corzine that launder or that rip money out of segregated accounts, and then he gets up in front of Congress and knows how to lie because he's an attorney, and he gets to go off scot-free.
Oh, and you'll never hear about it, right? Like a major story broke just earlier. I think it was late last week, right? I forget who it was. It was some conservative-related blog, but nevertheless, the citations were very good in quantifiably proving that not Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton was an FBI informant for the majority of his career, through the mid '80s to the mid '90s. right? So if we're talking about this kind of subversion that goes on, that should be a groundbreaking story. So this major public figure who still delivers you the news every night at 5 or 6 on MSNBC whenever a show is on, was an FBI informant selling out Black America for decades, and nobody talks about it.
But then
Nobody talks about it.
But that's what the stated goal was, Josh. That you were going to get people, and we're not just blowing smoke up your butt, people. We're talking about from factual FBI documents and what they were trying to do with stopping the anti-war movement and stopping the Martin Luther King movement. They were like, we got to co-opt some of these people in here and get them to start going along and just misdirect these people because they're not following the script anymore. And all this stuff is about to go down, and we've got to kind of quell this thing. And so they did. And that's and it's so funny that it comes out that that a government agency ends up murdering Martin Luther King, and nobody cares.
Yeah,
nobody cares. It's just like, oh, well, that's whatever. He was standing up. That's what happens. Like that's what happens. That's how what happens in North Korea or China. It's like you stand up and the government agent comes and pops you. That's what happens in a non-free country. That is not a free country when you've got covert ops to assassinate political leaders trying to incite change. They weren't trying to incite violence. They were trying to incite change, trying to get us to come together. Heaven forbid you ever do that. Holy crap. Don't do that in America. You'll be sure end up dead. It's a joke.
Yeah. Seriously though.
All right. So we got like 15 more minutes here, man. What's on your front burner? What have you been working on?
Oh my goodness, a few things, but I just really quickly, you mentioned the assassination of Dr. King, but think about this. Think about how many Americans not only don't know that, the King family sued the U.S. government, which was found guilty in a civil case in the late 90s, of course, proving that an Army Special Forces team assassinated John F. Kennedy from the roof of a barbecue joint, right? But do you really think that, most Americans know that Martin Luther King Jr. is dead? Some of them know he was assassinated. Do you honestly think most Americans even know the name, of the person who assassinated him? Supposedly, James Earl Ray?
No, not a chance.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, though. We live in a society where people don't even learn the propagandized history anymore.
Josh,
they don't even learn the dumb version.
Josh, we are the following. That was the funniest thing I've ever heard.
We are the dead is what we are, man.
I've seriously, I watched the show The Following because, I don't know, for some reason, I guess I need to start reading some more crime dramas because psychopaths...
No, you need to watch The Wire.
I do need to watch The Wire. Psychopaths absolutely fascinate me, and the fact that it's kind of like what Richard Grove was saying in the Peace Revolution, and I know I keep bringing this up, but it's fresh on my mind. He made a lot of really good points.
Which episode was this?
The most recent one about the British Empire, where they have "My Country 'Tis of Thee" and it's "God Save the Queen," and they're the exact same song.
Oh, I don't even think I've downloaded it yet.
All right.
But
so I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm like 6 hours in. But anyway, what...
The British Elephant in the American Living Room is the title.
Yay,
that's a good one.
Yay! All right, so God darn it! Now you got me off kilter here. Shoot, what was I talking about?
Something from the Peace Revolution episode Richard Grove said.
Yeah, and that's not pulling it up for me. Rolodex is not there.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. But I thought that was... Oh, here, hold on a second.
We were talking about James Earl Ray and the fact that people don't even understand the propagandized history.
Okay, well, let's see. That's almost getting me there. No, but it's... I don't know. I can't even recall it now. It's gone. It is gone.
It happens.
But that's the truth, though. The propagandized history is not even learned. It's just like... that's not really relevant to me going out and grabbing a beer on Friday night. And I think that's really sad. And I don't know how we could, I don't know. What do you think, people? How do we make learning sexy again? How do we make being informed sexy and astonishing and pulling it out of the doldrums of where it is? Because they tell you that Kesha and all this other stuff is sexy, and it's all just pure satanic garbage right in front of your face.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because that was actually one of the topics on my show earlier today, which I don't know if I'm going to keep doing because we've done 4 episodes now, and each episode has been just laden with technical difficulties. Like, I had to cut the show an hour short today because the feed died. That was real disappointing. But right as the show cut out, me and Robert got into a discussion about, these two kind of schools of thought. We've got, this one school of thought that I think, is espoused by media producers like the Ben Swans and some people like that, who say that, to a certain extent, we need to sell liberty. We need to market it. We need to use Eddie Bernays-esque techniques to make liberty sexy and fun, because they'll play a video game that espouses libertarian ideals, but they won't read a book about it,
They'll
right?
go see the Lego movie, but they have no idea that it's an anarchist thing.
Exactly. Versus someone like Richard Grove who says, no. We don't need to use their propaganda techniques to free people. We don't need as above, so below again. We need neither above nor below. We just need to learn that these techniques exist, and we need to realize that entertainment is nothing more than entertainment. It can sometimes have a message, but it's not real, folks.
Right.
The news media is entertainment. It's not real.
No, it's infotainment.
But exactly, sports is not real, people. Like, these are grown-ass men playing children's games and making billions of dollars. Like, this is the sign of a profoundly sick society. But that was the question that I posed to Robert and we were discussing is, would you rather see a future where propaganda is used to educate people, or would you rather just have people understand that propaganda exists? And which of those do you think can be accomplished?
Okay, one more time with the question. I was trying to pull up this because I want to show everybody.
Sure thing. So do you feel that we should be using propaganda, using the techniques of people like Bernays and Lippmann to bring the message of liberty to people, or do you think that we should be teaching people that propaganda exists and that you shouldn't, give it credence? And if whichever one of those you choose, do you think that it's actually attainable? Because a lot of people would argue, obviously, that making sexy videos about liberty is easier than telling people to read Tragedy and Hope.
I think that once again, just understand how the human mind works and understand what motivates people. And once again, the most valuable commodity that any human being has, and I think it's innate that they know this, is time. So you have to think about what's going to be the most effective use, or what's going to make the best use of their time. Is the best use of their time teaching them the trivium? Probably not, because they're not going to do it, because it's going to take effort. But if you say that, watch a sexy video, or like he said, sell liberty, I could see that. But, I mean...
But ultimately, if you do that, and let's say 100% of the society comes to liberty through movies and video games and TV because it's been inundated into them, you have society now, but you also have a society that's still just... Yeah, it
won't stay because of the fact that it'll be a war of attrition, as it always is.
They never. It's not that. It's just that they never learned anything. They're still programmable machines for the masses. It's just that you've programmed them to be free. Now I think that's one of the primary mistake or maybe contrived that the founding fathers made in this country, is that they tried to tell people how to be free. They made a document of rules and laws to try and force freedom upon people, because again, at the end of the day, the founding fathers were an aristocratic oligarchy here in America, and most of the people that were here were either very, very poor slaves, we call them indentured servants, but it was slavery, from Ireland and that were about to become citizens, or British criminals.
Correct.
It was the colonies were like Australia, right?
Right, and then you have people like Patrick Henry that basically the reason that he understood freedom so much is because he started at the grassroots. He taught himself how to become a lawyer. He taught himself how to argue political theory. He taught himself. So he learned what it was like to be free because he had to live it. I mean, he wasn't an aristocrat. He wasn't none of these people. That's why he was the anti-federalist, and if you read their writings, I'm much more aligned with the anti-federalists than I would with the federalists, because of the idea of having a federal government is dangerous. It is.
Absolutely, but Jake, like these people that we're talking about, whether it's a James Monroe or a Patrick Henry, both of whom walked out of the Second Constitutional Convention and said, this is not for me, and I hope it's not for America either.
He just basically tore it up and said, I'm not going to this. This is ridiculous. Once Patrick Henry saw what Washington wanted to do, he's like, he was sick, and he's like, I can't even go to this, but he's like, I'm very disappointed, and he showed up for the second one, and luckily got us the dang Bill of Rights. Otherwise, we were screwed.
Yeah, I mean, and James Monroe did the same thing. And, to his credit, he was, for the time, he was a very progressive man, like he was the founder of Liberia, like he lived in a climate where he couldn't have freed the slaves. So at least he tried to do what he could.
Right.
I mean, obviously, Liberia was a horrible failed experiment and ended with a terrible massacre because they took people from all over Africa and warring tribes and put them in the same location and tried to found a country off of it.
Sure.
It's this age-old problem of imperialists trying to run other people's lives.
It's
but
empire nation building is what they call it now.
Of course, but the point is that these two people, James Monroe and Patrick Henry, are not names of founding fathers that are household. People know who Thomas Jefferson is. They know who
George Washington, John Hancock.
George Washington.
This will give you an idea of how stupid our society is, and no offense to anybody out there, because I don't think that you're all stupid. I love you all, and we can all find a way to learn and get better. And please, God, just understand that what I'm going to say, don't take any offense to it. Now that I've said all that, have you seen the Rolling Stone cover where they had Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and then on her back they painted the
John Hancock's signature on the fucking Constitution? Yeah, correct. I saw that.
Correct.
Insane.
Come on, man.
Ridiculous. The second I saw it, it was like, click the link to find out why. And I was like, I don't need to click the link. It's clearly his signature on the wrong document.
Oh, we're in so much trouble.
Yeah, you're telling me, man.
Here, Josh, just listen. There's no similarities here, okay? Just this better not have any commercials on it either. Sorry, guys, this is an impromptu show. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Of course we have a commercial, and it's got to be 30 seconds. So you mute that one?
Dude, okay, 2 words, Adblock Plus.
Okay.
Download it right now.
I can't download it right now. We're actually doing a show. We're trying to show. I don't know what we're doing here. 4 minutes, but I do have to show everybody this so you can understand, America, that what Josh and I talk about, when we talk about the old empire, when we talk about colonialism, when we talk about these things, this is not just stuff that we made up. This is not happy fun time. Check this out. Here you go, Josh. This is great. Let me know if this sounds familiar, Americans. Okay, so let me see if you can find this. What do you think, Josh? Hold on a second. Hold on. Keep your...
God Save the Queen, right?
Yes. Now, let's see. Wait. That is God Save the Queen. What's the, hold on. Here you go. Here's another good one. It's gonna have an ad. All right, everybody, get ready. It's such a free country. But that sounds like God Save the Queen, Josh. How is that possible? Why would we do that?
Oh. Let freedom ring, God Save the Queen. Same difference, right?
Oh man, everybody, what a fun time I had tonight. I was really distraught after today, after having the state just knock me in the head and kick me while I was down, and then watching what happened in Nevada with these poor people. I understand what they're going through. I had a little run-in with the state today, and it reaffirmed my belief system, and it reaffirmed my duty to what I'm supposed to do, and that is to not only unlock minds, but offer a little bit of guidance, and maybe, just maybe, we can do exactly what Josh was talking about, and we can get people to start thinking critically, and start asking the question, not only why, but what? What causes this? Not why does it cause, but what?
90 seconds.
That's a nice one. So, Josh, we're about to be done, as the lady just told us. Where can we find your work, and how can people get in touch with you?
The best way to find all my stuff is just to go to www.journalisticrevolution.com. We've got a lot of new things in the pipe, as we always do over at journalisticrevolution.com. It's just a matter of, getting off of our fat behinds and implementing this stuff. But I've got a podcast series over there. We've got a video series that I do with my
60
good buddy Jake
seconds.
Counts that everyone should check out. Again, that's journalisticrevolution.com. Throw us some Bitcoin while you're at it, especially since it's below $400 right now.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That just made my day go even worse. Thank you, Josh. That was the cherry. You could have
no
told
problem.
me it was like it's 700. I would have been really, really happy. Well, that's going to do it for the show, everybody. Once again, I will be moving to Liberty Movement Radio here in the next couple of weeks. We'll be still keeping the stream on Blog Talk, but I will only be broadcasting live through Liberty Movement Radio. And I will let you know that if you follow me on Twitter, if you follow me on Facebook, please go like my YouTube channel, We Are Not Cattle TV. Please like my Facebook page. And also get on my little Twitter feed. I've been tweeting a lot. Tweeting? Whatever. Don't really.
10 seconds.
That's it, everybody. Thanks again. Once again, get a friend, get informed, and get involved, and pray for those people out in Nevada because I think they're going to need it. Take care, everybody.
You deserve your freedom. Yes, and the feeling that you
God save the Queen.
freedom. Well, it's all for you, all for you, all for you, all for you.
I should message Robert.
Thank you for using Blog Talk
Hold on a
Radio.
second. Let me set
Goodbye.
off my